Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another cammyboiG reaction. And, God, today is a day of celebration for me, because at the time of me recording this, I have finally completed chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, which means I can now, actually watch theories about chapters 3 and 4 without getting spoiled. Oh, I gotta tell you, the wait was excruciating, and due to some real life events, my recording schedule for chapters 4 was a lot slower than I would have liked it to. But thankfully, I was able to get a new episode of the playthrough out every day, and as of now, it is finally over. So yeah, today's video, once again by cammyboiG, is Deltarune Chapters 3+4 just changed everything. And by God, has a truer statement never been said? I mean, unless the game does some sort of weird curveball, it's pretty much confirmed that the knight is either the mayor or somehow Des. And while Chris isn't the knight themselves, they are an accomplice? But whether they're an unwilling accomplice or a willing one has yet to be seen. Also, little spoilers for those that haven't seen it, it's pretty much been confirmed that Chapter 5, when it does release, sometime in 2026, mind you, that it's probably going to take place in Asgore's shop, and he's going to be the boss, or the secret boss, somehow, because he has one of the black shards that the secret bosses have. So, yeah, a lot happened. Oh yeah, and let's not forget that in Chapter 4, we fought a Titan! Oh, man, I swear, if I saw, I'm gonna have to look it up, see if I can find anybody who made, like, bingo cards for Chapters 3 and 4. I'm gonna have to see if any of them had fighting a Titan as one of the squares, because I don't think any of them would have. So much happened. I mean, again, as I said, I'm just happy to, I can finally get into some of these new videos without fear of getting spoiled. So yeah, we should probably get into this then. So, yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because my main goal for this year is to hopefully hit 5,000 subscribers. And my God, I am so close at the time of recording, and honestly, again, as I said before, it is only thanks to you guys that, think my channel is worth subscribing to that I've gotten this far. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Ho! What's up, you little freaks? Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 just came out. I played them, you most likely played them, and as a result, we are changed people. These chapters were such a surprise in the best way possible, and really made it clear that we did not know shit about this game 2 weeks ago. And I'm not just talking about the major theories that were disproven, but the...
God, okay, the Woody theory. I mean, I'm still sad that Woody theory wasn't true, though I did see a video talking about a new Woody theory, so I'm definitely gonna have to watch that one.
Very structure of the game, the things we assumed were no-brainers, turned out not to be true at all. It's a completely new world out there. So I just wanted to take some time and talk with you guys about it. I haven't written a script for this video, I'm just sort of gonna ramble at my microphone for a while, so so without further ado, let's just talk. So I wanted to start with my thoughts on Chapter 3, and how funny it is that 5 minutes into this fucking chapter, Ralsei looks at the camera and says, "cammyboiG, I am a Darkner." In all seriousness, I really don't think my Ralsei theory has suffered that much as a result of these chapters. I still think it's pretty solid, but I'm going to save the section for where I think my theories stand now in the current zeitgeist till the end of the video. But what I love so much about the conversation that Ralsei and Susie have at the beginning of Chapter 3 is that it takes Susie to a place that a lot of us didn't think she would go until, like, the end game. The fact that Susie knows what Darkners are now, and there's no question about it at this point in the narrative, is so refreshing. I think a lot of us were under the assumption that Susie finally learning that, all of her Darkner friends weren't real and none of the adventures were real was going to be sort of an endgame revelation for Susie, and it would be devastating for her. Like, we thought it was an arc that would build up to the end, and it's so nice that this reveal just ends out of the way, and so Susie doesn't feel like a dumbass for the sake of the narrative anymore. Having her face this revelation this early on is going to leave so much more room for her character to develop over the course of the game, and
Oh, God, yeah. I hadn't actually thought of that particularly, but God, yeah, he was right. Like, so much so. Because, I mean, just, in media general, I mean, like, was it called the third act, like, breakup or something like that, where some misunderstanding happens where, the heroes split up and something happens and they're alone for an island, and it's like, honestly, it's done so often in like, movies and stuff like that, and for the stupidest reasons, like, the stupidest misunderstandings that, people get tired of it, and the fact that they're kind of just, like, speeding past this and not even, like, acknowledging, like, oh, it's, we're just kind of like, oh yeah, we're, like, Rousey just outright says, we're not real, like, as Darkners. And then he specifically says, yeah, if you ever get tired of us, go out and make some real friends. Which, man, that line right there. Oh, God. I mean, again, it's one of those things that, just as a community, we were kind of not giving Susie enough credit. Like, granted, like, she's, so far throughout the entire game, she's always been portrayed as, the big, strong, brutish bully, for lack of a better term, who's, not that smart. But, when confronted with, the information that, one of her friends literally isn't a real being, she just says, I don't care. She doesn't get all mopey about it. She says, you're my friend. I don't care if you're imaginary.
Already has, especially in Chapter 4, and in regards to her relationship with the Darkners and the Prophecy. And also, the way it digs into Ralsei at the core of who he is really fantastic as well. We're really starting to delve into his lack of self-worth and his sense of self, his own personality and opinions are starting to bud. Anyway, in the middle of this, like, beautiful character moment that Ralsei and Susie have together, that
here comes
cutscene
Tenna!
where Ralsei is explaining how Darkners are really objects, and out of fucking nowhere, again, first 5 minutes in the chapter, Friend appears on screen.
Oh, right,
but
yeah.
Friend isn't just a normal cat, it's fucking Endogeny from Undertale.
Or would it really be said to be more like Encatany, given, cat ears and stuff like that?
I still don't know what to make of this, and I'm so flabbergasted by it. I can't stop thinking about it. And it's so bizarre to me how we don't have any concrete theories or answers about why this thing was on screen. Friend appears as it's similarly shaped to Endogeny. It has 5 legs with cat silhouettes that make up the in-between of the legs, very similar to Endogeny, but it's black instead of white. And it appears to be a cat instead of a dog. Though the strange thing is, they both have pointy ears, so they're more similar than different in my opinion. I think the silhouette's similar enough that I think there's sort of a question to be asked if they're the same thing or if they're different. But I think the other hints that Friend is a cat probably lean toward them being different things. But even so, the comparison between them is insane. Because now we have to ask the question, how is Friend related to Endogeny? Does Friend have something to do with determination experiments, or maybe like darkness experiments? Are they the Deltarune equivalent of Endogeny in that they are several cats put together somehow using darkness? It's baffling. It's baffling. And then he fucking jump scares you. And then of course we get the introduction of Tenna. After all the build-up to finally seeing Tenna on screen, it felt almost impossible that we could be surprised by anything Toby showed us. But one thing I never saw any fanworks depict or suggest is that Tenna would be a pre-rendered 3D model. Like, straight out of fucking Donkey Kong Country.
Again, like, I specifically, like, mentioned that when I was playing, when I was playing Chapter 3, and, like, I remember, of course, like, over the span of the time when we were waiting for Chapters 3 and 4 to come out, a lot of people came out with fan designs, and a lot of them were relatively similar, at least in theme, where, like the suit, tie, very, like, TV personality kind of dressed with a TV for a head. But again, like, the fact, like, Tumblr, like, 3D pre-rendered Tumblr Sexy Man Tenna was not on anybody's bingo card. And again, like, just the amount of like Let's Plays I watched, where I only watched like the first episode just to see people's reaction, where it transitions from the 3D video to the pre-rendered sprite, and just everybody's reaction to it. Oh, just absolutely beautiful.
And I absolutely love the style of Tenna. He's the most expressive sprite in Deltarune by a country mile. He is
I mean, it helps that he's a lot higher resolution, technically.
so funny. I love the fucking word art that appears in his text. One of the most fascinating things about Tenna is that he is by far the most sympathetic main antagonist we've had so far. Throughout all of Chapter 3, I feel like you're expecting Tenna to have some sort of heel turn, and I mean, to his credit, he does have a turn where he goes aggro and we need to fight him eventually. But it's not because he wants control or because he wants power. It's just because he is lonely and the family has left him alone for so many years and he just misses them. He misses Chris and Toriel and the rest of the Dreamers. I absolutely love Tenna.
Actually, thinking about it, something I just realized, like, right now, is the fact that Tenna is kind of like the other side of the coin from King. Because, like, why was King, the villain of Chapter 1? It's because, Lightner, he'd become disillusioned because Lightners had abandoned him and everybody else in his, kingdom for years. And then the Knight came along and he's like, oh, and he basically pledged fealty to the Knight, and, that's how Chapter 1 happened. And yet here you have Tenna in Chapter 3, who has basically the same, like, motivation. He was basically abandoned and ignored by the Lightners, the Dreamers, for literal years. But whereas King became malicious and wanted to conquer the Lightners, Tenna just wants them to start spending time with him like they used to.
And God, I hope there's a good payoff for giving him to Mettaton, because I miss having Tenna in my castle town. I want to see his stupid VR chat dance sprite dancing in my castle town. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So after the Tenna introduction, you get thrown into this video game segment where Chris, Susie, and Ralsei all sit on the couch and play like an NES-style Deltarune.
Legend of Zelda.
This segment, I adore it so much. And the work that must have gone into this segment must have been so huge. Like, of course, Chapter 3 took so much more time than the other chapters did to develop, because the interplay between Chris, Susie, and Ralsei controlling the characters on screen while still having dialogue off-screen and having different scenarios that the characters are doing shit in. It's hard to explain all in one go like that, but it is so well crafted.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, again, like, I remember, I think everybody remembers that, when Toby said he was kind of worried how people would, think of, he was kind of worried what people would think of Chapter 3 because it was so gimmicky compared to everything else. But honestly, I don't know whether it's just the fact it was gimmicky or really funny, or it was also partially just because of, like, just how fresh it was. It wasn't just another regular chapter. I mean, granted, there were regular sections, but you had all of this, like, just wacky quizzes and the Legend of Zelda section at the beginning. And it felt fresh and just so, well, different from everything else. And I think that's the best. I think that's like quite literally the best part of Chapter 3. I mean, granted, I still have to go back and play it again because I need to get S rank to try to get the mantle. But, hey, what are you gonna do? That's future Fort Master's problem.
Susie and Ralsei feel like they're reacting to everything happening on screen perfectly. Tenna, again, on the couch is great. Every line of his is great. Pushing buddies. Susie's like, I can't figure out how to kill this guy. And Tenna's like, get in line, kid. I really can't praise the video game segments enough. They're the last thing I expected, and I love them. I especially love the part where Susie and Ralsei and Chris all switch controllers. There's so many good jokes in that bit, and again, more Ralsei character development about him developing his own sense of self.
Like the fact you put a bow on Susie.
First of all, Ramb. What a fucking fascinating character. So if you weren't privy to this information, Ramb was actually teased a few weeks before the chapters dropped when the whole Spamton Sweepstakes 2 happened. A bunch of new teasers were dropped on the Spamton Sweepstakes website. And my dumb ass, because there were two links on the website, one to a page called Ramb and one to a page called Rom, I thought that Ramb and Rom were two separate characters. So I thought Ramb was the guy in front and then Rom was the guy in back in the S-rank room. So when I went on Twitter after beating the game and I saw so much love for Ramb, I was like, Ramb didn't do anything. What are you guys talking about?
Oh.
Or they were the same guy. Ramb and Rom are just Ramb. and Ramb is just a misspelling of Ramb in one of the quiz segments later on. So that was funny.
God, again, it's little stuff like that. Like, I'm just trying. Granted, I know there are people. Like, I remember from the Under event, there are people making their own version of like Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. I haven't played them, and I want to see, kind of like, I want to know how like their developments of Chapters 3 and 4 are going to go now that the actual 3 and 4 are actually here.
That whole misunderstanding. But anyways, I love Ramb. I don't quite understand his design. It's like he has purple hair that also is dog ears, and I guess he's a power strip that Chris and Azrael stole from the library. But also the backstory that Ramb is able to give you is so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
He gives us the most complete look into how Darkner backstories work that I think we've seen up to this point. And he talks about how Chris and that girl, I assume that girl is Noelle. I think you could also stretch it to mean Des, but I frankly
could be
just
either,
think that
really.
Chris and Noelle are more likely to be the ones playing make-believe together than Chris and Des. But he said that Chris and Noelle would play make-believe with a bunch of stuff in the living room, and Chris would have King on their side, and Noelle would have Queen, and Tenna would be there in the back, and Ramb was there. And that confirms, first of all, why Queen and King know each other, but also that all of these Darkners used to be a part of a make-believe game that Chris and Noelle used to play with each other. Like, all of these Darkners spawned from a game that Chris and Noelle would play as children, which is so interesting, and
Which, the question kind of stands, what kind of game were they playing? Because, I mean, I can totally, believe, little children grabbing just random household objects and turning them into toys. I mean, that's totally believable. But I'm trying to imagine what kind of game you're playing where, like, the items in play are, a playing card, a king playing card, a laptop, the TV, a power strip, and various other random assortments of objects. Like, I can't picture, like, it might be just my old grown-up brain having trouble, but, like, I can't figure out a potential, like, game that could be played with that. Unless they were just playing, it's like, here's my soldier, bang, 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 that sort of thing.
I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about that yet. It makes you call further into question the nature of Darkners, because Ralsei is really pushing this whole Darkners don't matter and you should be able to forget about us mindset. And of course we don't want that to be true. We want Ralsei to be real and Lancer and everyone else. But my question is now, did these characters and personalities actually spawn from Chris and Noelle's imagination? Do they have that much influence over their personalities and who they are? And another thing Ramb does is strengthen my Ralsei theory. And again, I'll talk more about this later, but he makes it pretty clear that the Darkners in Chris's house know each other, and they've known each other for a very long time, which makes it all the more suspicious why, if Ralsei is Chris's horn headband or a green crayon, why doesn't anyone know who Ralsei is in Chris's house? But anyways, the water cooler fight is also fucking insane. The mini games are great. Actually, the mini games aren't great. I fucking hate Susie Zilla. Susie Zilla can suck my ass.
Yeah, Susie Zilla is hard.
I don't know how to play it. I played it for 2 hours trying to get an S rank, and I just decided to stop. Oh, but the music mini game is so good. Raise Up Your Bat is so fucking goated, and it's so fascinating how it gives us a look into Des's personality, I think. If the baseball bat connection wasn't obvious already, there are also posters in Des's room for band concerts that never happened, and a lot of people are inferring that Raise Up Your Bat was actually a song written by Des for her band Blood Crushers 3, which was apparently a band that Noelle was listening to during the sweepstakes on her blog. That's a whole can of worms, but still, Raise Up Your Bat, fantastic song, and a really fascinating to look into what I think Des's personality was like. And the fucking when the Lost Girl part came in for the first time, I was weeping. I wasn't weeping, I don't weep, but,
Yeah, honestly, I had to listen to that song a few times before I actually started picking up the motifs, just because the first time I played it, I was so focused on actually playing it and just trying not to suck that I wasn't actually listening to the music, really. I was just watching when things had to be hit at the right time as they were dropping.
I was mentally weeping for sure. So after all the video game segments in the green room, you get to Toriel. And this is where the first really big major shakeup happened, at least in my mind.
The fact she was asleep the entire time!
We're going to be getting Dark World tag-alongs in the same way that we thought we were going to get them. Everyone assumed that Toriel would be one of the party members this chapter, and that Undyne would end up showing up too, as well as Nefstablook probably. Toriel sleeps the entire time, and Undyne appears for 10 seconds at the end. And I think a lot of people are bummed about that.
God,
Rightfully
yeah,
so.
I know I was.
Something for that long, it ends up not being true. I think a lot of people can't help but be disappointed. I personally never really thought we were going to get any other additional party members besides Noelle, so I'm not that broken up about it. Oh, and so before...
Yeah, I mean, that was just... I mean, I was bummed about that for a couple of reasons. One, because of my whole, like, multi-weird root theory that I had come up with, that kind of relied on Toriel either going destruction like Noelle kind of did with fire magic, or just being an overprotective mother and having Chris not interact with anything, going, you know, a broken weird root or whatever. But also just like the fact that, you know, she spent the entire chapter sleeping. Like, I could potentially understand, you know, if Tenna put her in the ball relatively quickly, maybe the ball had some form of, you know, sound dampening, you know, qualities just from her being inside. But, like, are you telling me the entire fight that we were battling, you know, the night, that with Toriel not, like, maybe 20 or 30 feet behind the group as they're fighting tonight, she didn't wake up at all from any of that? Like, at that point, that's starting... I know this is the Dark World, it's supposed to be all sort of fantasy, but at that point, that's starting to stretch my disbelief there a little bit.
Before I move on to the ending of the chapter, let's talk about the fucking S-rank minigames, because this is insane. I thought I had accidentally stumbled onto the weird route the first time I was playing it. It was that scary.
Honestly, I could not for the life of me figure out what this would have originally said. But then I saw on Twitter that somebody pointed out that the letters and the silhouettes match up very well with literally just the word mantle. So maybe that's what the original game was.
Ramb lets you into the back room when you get an S rank, and there's this strange video game console that you can't play without a controller. But when you try to exit the room,
you find the controller.
There's a controller on the ground for you with pink and yellow buttons, and of course it's fucking pink and yellow. More friend shit happening.
Yeah.
We still, despite all the new information about friend, we still know truly fucking
nothing
about friend.
Well, hey, yeah, at this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out Friend was the knight all along.
Anyhow, we get to play this game that Tenna altered for all of us to play, but we get to play the original version of it, where we're controlling Chris with a sword in this version of the game, and there are a lot of monsters roaming around, and we just have to take them all out. And these games start to feel like you're playing like a fictionalization of the Weird Route. The Weird Route, or even Undertale's Genocide Route, which is fascinating, because all the monsters you're killing look similar to Undertale characters. You have a yellow lizard, a blue fish,
flowers,
you have these white, like, demon-looking guys, but their shape is exactly like Toriel's head. And then a yellow one of those demon guys who's throwing red spears like Asgore, and flowers. See, this is why I think it's actually connected to Undertale Genocide, because most of these characters appear in Deltarune, but one who super does not is
Flowey, yeah, definitely.
And these flowers on this map look exactly like Flowey, like the same petal arrangement, which is so fascinating. Again, I don't know what to make of this, I just know that that's what I think. But eventually, once you kill enough monsters, you get to kill the bird. And that's the first indication that this is also connected to the Weird Route, because I mean, I don't need to explain it. You fucking kill Birdly in the Weird Route. Or, actually, I was gonna start talking about the Weird Route, but let's save the Weird Route for, like, its own section later on.
Actually, another thing I saw on Twitter, and it was somebody suggesting that if the game had been released normally, with chapters 1 to 4 released all in one chunk, that maybe this video game console, you know, the game we're playing, might have been the way we were supposed to originally figure out there was a weird route. Because, again, you have the white, like, wizard, Noelle, and the blue bird, Birdly, that you freeze. And maybe that was supposed to be a way we were supposed to, like, discover, oh, if we go back to chapter 2, we can freeze Birdly with Noelle eventually, and that does the weird route and stuff like that. And again, all the, like, going back to, like, you know, the potential weird root stuff like that, from what I saw, from what I've seen, there aren't that many, like, explicit differences in chapter 3 if you have the weird root, which still very much confuses me given that one page with the different sized numbers and the ones that are blacked out. Like, what is that supposed to mean?
But basically, you kill all the monsters on that map and you can finally get the ice key. And the Ice Palace was something that we thought we wouldn't be seeing until the end of the game. Again, the Ice Palace is something that was teased by the Spamton sweepstakes. It was really just a blue screen with white blocks on it. Like, we had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
You know, scary, obscure ice-related shit, obviously that's endgame weird route stuff. But it's in Chapter 3. So during the second
not even weird
video
route
game board, you try and
dependent.
take the raft to the top of the map, Tenna will stop you and say that we're not allowed to go up there. But if you go up there during the backstage version of the game, you can go into the Ice Palace. And you're killing more monsters in there, but what's more is you get a character in a white robe that I think has to represent Noelle, who
Pretty
allows
much,
you
yeah.
to shoot ice at enemies and destroy them better. But you use the Ice Mage character to progress further in the game, and then eventually you have to kill her. With the text, "She was used up," which is so scary and so fascinating. It makes it seem like Noelle is going to be expendable in the weird route somehow. Like, once you're done using her, you discard her. Things being discarded has always been a pretty reoccurring subject in these games, so Noelle being one of those discarded things is pretty disconcerting. And of course you get the bunker key. Or, no, not the bunker.
Shelter.
The shelter key. I'm gonna have to like rearrange my brain to start saying fuck. I'm gonna have to start rearranging my brain to say shelter instead of bunker, because the game is finally talking about that thing and it's using the word shelter. And I can't remember if this is where it happens or not, but also at a point it says you were used up. After the white mage gets used up, it says you were used up, which is even scarier. That implies that after Noelle's done being used, maybe Chris is gonna be done being used as well at some point in the weird route. But
I mean, alternatively, it does say you were used up. Well, I mean, it did say she was used up, but I mean, it could obviously be talking directly to Chris as in you were used up, or it could be talking about us as in we were used up.
The third instance of the mantle game is where things get fucking nuts. This is where you make Chris walk into the bunker, and you really have to make them. They're resisting the whole time you try to make them go in. But they go in and you encounter this thing that the fandom has been calling Eram, E-R-A-M, because the soundtrack that plays when you're first meeting this thing is Eram. The nature of this thing is so unknown at this point. It has a connection to Friend, apparently. Some people are speculating that it is Friend, because it summons Friend during its fights. But it itself is sort of like well, let's back up a little bit. You're fighting this thing, Aram, to get the Shadow Mantle, which we've known for a very long time now, that Sham says we're going to need the Shadow Mantle to get the third Shadow Crystal, i.e. to beat the Chapter 3 secret boss. But this thing not only does it have a connection to Friend, but it's teasing Chris about wanting to collect the Shadow Crystals. And to be honest, I gotta take the L on this one, because I honestly thought that the Shadow Crystals were not going to be plot important. I thought they were essentially just like a physical way to track which secret bosses you've beaten, so you could keep track of it across different profiles and stuff. But no, these Shadow Crystals are plot important as shit.
And apparently there's only going to be 5, because if I remember correctly, from what I saw somebody else's playthrough, in Chapter 3, when you, give it to Sham, he says, "Oh, you've gotten 3," and, all that, and he says, "Oh, only 2 more." So, what does that say about Chapter 6 and 7? Oof.
And it starts teasing Chris about how they're having fun collecting them. And anyways, this fight is hard as hell. Because it's so different from the rest of Deltarune's gameplay, I actually struggled on it for quite some time.
Yeah, because it's a Legend of Zelda fight.
Where it gets fucking crazy. The boss leaves the Shadow Mantle in a chest that your character in the game can't reach. So you have to walk outside of the screen. You, in the little pixelated Chris on the screen, exit the screen and start approaching Chris. And Chris starts backing up, and God, it's such an intense image, so horrifying. And I think it sort of establishes a pattern that we're seeing with collecting the shadow crystals. In a lot of ways, we are putting Chris through it when we're collecting these shadow crystals. The encounters with Spamton and Jevil, they both really emphasize how trapped and not free Chris is. You know, freedom is obviously the big theme with those two. Chris is
Freedom motif,
really
yeah.
perturbed after the Spamton fight, after Spamton's strings are cut and he collapses. Now more than ever, if you want to have the Chapter 3 Shadow Crystal, you need to do this to Chris. You need to force them into the bunker and have them confront you as the little sprite version of them. And
which I have to, that's the whole thing, because if you remember, at the beginning of these, like, little video game sections, we always see, like, the soul on screen before, you know, like, the little pixelated Chris covers it up. So in this instance, I almost have to believe that this is very much us, the soul or something, directly confronting Chris. Because I don't know if cammyboi's going to, you know, actually talk about it, but there is a thing where after you get the Shadow Mantle, when Susie walks in, I had no idea you could do this, but apparently you still control little Chris, and you can kind of sneak up behind Susie, and I forget whether if you attack her, or if it's just Chris pulling her away, and there's like this little moment that really hints at a potential for like, oh god, I'm forgetting the name, but whatever, like, the ship name for, like, Chris and Susie is, like, Cruzy or something like that. Like, it's really weird. And, like, just, what, is little Chris going to come back? What is happening?
It's honestly, it's uncomfortable. But anyways, so much strangeness. I mean, we already knew that Chris had some sort of encounter with the shelter when they were a child, but this only emphasizes that more and also connects a friend to the shelter. Mm-hmm. But anyways, moving back to the main game at hand, the segment that comes after all the game boards is so fucking good. The segment where you're moving through the TV studio and recruiting all the enemies and making everyone quit Tenna's company. The song that plays during this part, TV World. Best fucking song in Chapter 3. I know people are hyping up It's TV Time, Tenna's boss theme, but TV
I mean, it is
World
good.
Is so good. And the rules fight is so fucking funny. The rules, God.
Is it really a fight? It's not really a fight so much as it is a puzzle and a timing game.
Rules enough until now. Like, I knew he was a funny guy, but like I didn't know that his fight would be the peak of comedy in this chapter. Holy shit. Him being in a throuple with La Nina and El Nina and fucking directing their attacks with a laser pointer. God, every time you think that Toby Fox can't possibly innovate a battle in a way that you'd never expect, he does it again. It's like clockwork. And then finally we get to the end of the chapter. The Tenna boss fight is so good. It's like playing WarioWare. I'm a big WarioWare fan. I have been ever since I was a kid. And getting to switch between all these mini games while fighting him, it's the perfect way to encapsulate the whole vibe of this chapter and also innovate on the battle system in a way that I never would have expected. Because fighting Queen in Chapter 2, you're like, this isn't like a unique soul mode or anything like the bosses in Undertale had. It's just, we're playing a different game now. It's Punch-Out. So, like, how is this going to be expanded upon in future chapters? And
WarioWare.
I think basically playing WarioWare in Tenna's boss fight is one of the best directions it could have possibly gone in. And It's TV Time, the song that plays, is also fucking phenomenal. Tenna's a fascinating character to me because for a while I feel like I didn't quite get him. Because in a lot of ways he felt like an extension of Spamton. You know, he talks in a showmanly manner. He has that big pointy...
I mean, that connection to Spamton is kind of, you know, on point, given that they apparently knew each other.
White nose. He even shares a lot of musical motifs with Spamton. And I think I thought this because Spamton has held such an important place in the community for so long, for almost 5 years now.
God, yeah,
so when
right.
a character comes in with all these connections to Spamton, he feels like an extension of Spamton. But what I had to realize is that if these chapters all came out at the same time like originally intended, it would feel the opposite. Like, Spamton would feel like foreshadowing of Tenna. And I think that's what was holding me back from really loving Tenna until now, because I didn't understand that. I thought it was like more Spamton, but Spamton was just our first taste of Tenna. And Hey Every, the it was never Spamton's motif in the first place. That is Tenna's motif to a T. It's Mr. Antenna's TV time, but it's just missing the time. So that's why that's why Hey Every is everywhere in Chapter 3, because that's fucking Tenna's song.
Which, I mean, on one hand, I'm a little sad about, because, like, granted, I like the connection between them, that they have this some sort of, like, weird, like, relationship. On the other hand, it does kind of make sense, given that we see Spamton as, you know, a very washed up, you know, former famous salesman and stuff like that. So the idea that potentially, like, now that he's so much down on his luck, he just basically borrows and steals literally everything. I mean, it makes sense.
And he stole it, like he's broke, and he fucking, and like he stole Tenna's heart. The Spamton Tenna story is also fascinating. I'm honestly not super knowledgeable on it right now, but it seems like it's unclear to me if Tenna was the person who was giving Spamton success on the phone, or if we're still blaming Gaster for that, or what. But clearly they had a partnership and it didn't end well. Oh god, and the cut scene where they interact is so strange. It felt like watching a fan animation, to be honest. Like, maybe I'll warm up to it eventually, I don't know. But let's get serious for a second.
Oh god,
I feel like it's a little deflating to have Spamton actually just come out of your pocket and regain his regular form. Because to me it felt like there was a sort of significance to the secret bosses sort of giving up their physical form to become items for you. Like, it felt meaningful in a way. And the fact that they can just go back to being their normal selves is kind of, I won't say disappointing, but it does make the resolution to their fights less meaningful in my mind, less cogent. Not to say the cutscene isn't funny, though, but
I mean, I like it because you know pretty much it's not going to happen again, because he says so. It's like, Chris, I'm never doing that again, and then just back into your inventory.
Anyway, after the Tenna fight, I could not believe my fucking mind. Out of nowhere, the goddamn Roaring Knight appears. Don't talk to me about Seven Knights theory, okay? I'm still mourning. Toby took Seven Knights theory out back and shot it in the back of the head. I'm fine. I just need a little bit more time to process things. But the Roaring Knight's appearance was one of the best fucking moments in this entire game. How insane. How cool. And the appearance is fucking...
Yeah, again, this whole design, I mean, granted, it's one of those things, of course, there were, like, literally dozens and dozens of fan knight designs before Chapter 3 came out. And all of them had the motif of looking like, a Lightner in an actual, like, suit of armor. Which, given what we knew at the time, made sense. But now that we know the knight is this sort of, like, otherworldly, shape-shifting, like, abomination almost, that can somehow keep this form in the light world? Oh god, there's something definitely going on there, and what kind of accident made you?
Roaring Knight has deer horns. And
yeah.
Now the question isn't who is the knight with every single person in town on the suspect list. It's now, is it Des or is it Carol?
Or is it Noelle, if she does in fact have a split personality? I'm still holding out hope for that one. Never mind, no.
Because Des has a baseball bat and the knight's sword looks an awful lot like a baseball bat, but Carol has a black katana in her house, which also could be the knight's sword. I'm on the Des side of things, I think, but I think there's room for both. I think a lot of people are leaning a little too hard into Des, and I think there's still room to find out. But I am on Team Des at the moment.
Again, until I see more proof or a convincing argument, I'm flip-flopping and kind of staying in the middle. I mean, granted, I've seen a lot of good and really adorable art of Desriel, like Des and Asriel shipping, where it's like, it's Asriel in his like hyper god form from Undertale, and Des like with like almost like, God, what would be the best way to describe it? Almost like the mask of the armor kind of like peeling back, almost like Venom. So it's like she's like dressed as, the knight, but just her face is exposed, and it's just the two of them. Like, honestly, it's adorable, and it's really cool. I just have no idea how this thing is going to actually work out.
And the music, Black Knife, it's fucking... Oh. And I think if you're not aware, the knight fight is also the secret boss air quotes, of this
quote
chapter,
unquote, yeah.
because it appears to be a cutscene boss, you know, like a boss that you lose automatically to, and then the story progresses. But has there ever been a game before where you encounter a cutscene boss, but then if you go back and fight the cutscene boss again, it'll let you retry? That is such a cool subversion of that trope, and I don't know if it's appeared anywhere else, but of course it would come from Toby's mind, right?
Well, I mean, again, just going back, the whole thing that, again, like, the fact, well, Cammy's probably going to talk about it, but the fact if you do a no-hit run, Chris literally coughs to get the knight's attention, saying, hey, we better wrap this up. Just, oh, God, it's just so funny.
The knight is so fucking cool, dude. It's just so fucking cool. And then it takes Undyne to the bunker. It tries to take Toriel to the, not the bunker, the shelter. It tries to take Toriel, but it ends up taking Undyne to the shelter. And Chris and Susie find out that there is a code to get in the shelter. One with a Christmas tree, one with a cop's badge, and one with a Deltarune next to it. And that is so fascinating, because Susie starts speculating on, like, who could have a connection to the church and the cops and to the holidays. And I don't know about you guys, but my mind went to Asgore. And there's more about Asgore to talk about that we'll get to later. By the way, since I mentioned Asgore, I just want to point out, despite everything I got wrong in the Seven Knights videos, I got one bizarrely specific thing correct. And that's the fact that I theorized that Toby cut the intro where we would see the silhouette of the knight because the knight's horns would give away who they were. And in that video, I suggested that Asgore's horns would have given away the knight's identity, but in fact,
Asgore's
the fucking
horns.
deer horns would have given away the knight's identity. So funny how that worked out. But anyways, Susie walks off screen, leaving Chris alone with the bunker there at the end, and then the bunker opens for Chris.
Which, again, something I didn't actually notice or didn't really register when I played at the time, but we saw originally when the bunker was originally open, there was, you know, the black, smoky darkness pouring out of it, you know, as if there was a dark fountain inside, which, you know, there probably is. But when it opens again for just Chris, there's no smoke or darkness pouring out, as if the fountain inside was closed before the doors were opened again. I really have to wonder if that actually is the case, or if it was just, you know, if the smoke wasn't included just to help, you know, make things look a little neater.
It seems like Chris is working with the knight. And that's not the only reason why. There's also the fact that when you defeat the knight in battle, after the knight takes out Susie and Ralsei with one fell swoop each, the knight doesn't take out Chris. The knight lays their sword on their shoulder, and it gets them to kneel for them. There's that, and the fact that Chris will also kneel to them when they're down in battle. Mm-hmm. So it appears that Chris is working with the knight, but also that's not the only allegiance Chris has. So Chapter 3 overall, so different from the chapters we've had before. And
yeah,
everything
was
the
different.
First indication that nothing we thought we knew about this game was correct. And Chapter 3 alone disproves so many things we thought to be true. First of all, chess theory out the fucking window. I think a lot of people, including me, were in denial about chess theory because Tenna was so obviously going to be the big boss of Chapter 3, but we were all trying to find ways where somehow Rook could actually be the boss. Like,
I mean, okay, so here's one thing. I did see a screenshot on Twitter, and I don't know whether it was, like doctored or anything. But I did see a screenshot on Twitter that somebody shared where during his boss battle, Tenna literally says, "Joke's on you, my surname is Rook," or, you know, something like that. And I don't know if that was real or if it was, like, just a Photoshop joke. But at the same time, like, I can't remember what video I said it first, but it was one that I said a couple of times before, you know, the whole ball got really rolling with, you know, people getting stoked about chapters 3 and 4 coming out. And it was the fact that, you know, theorizing is just on the other end of fan fiction. And even with all the little sprinklings and tidbits that, you know, Toby had been throwing out over the years between chapters 2 and 3, the scale of theorizing was still very steadily moving all the way over to from actual, like, theorizing about what's happening to just outright fan fiction. And like, chapters 3 and 4 smashing so many of these pre-existing theories basically kicked it all the way back over to theorizing again, and just kind of, it's like, woke everybody up to saying, oh god, we didn't actually know anything.
if Rook was part of Tenna's name, or if Rook was like someone Tenna answers to. But no, there's no Rook. Chess theory just isn't real. But there's also the fact that this whole time we've just been taking for granted the fact that both secret bosses have been these discarded objects that went crazy, presumably because of the influence of Gaster. There are two things that could be considered secret bosses in this chapter, and neither one of them fit that criteria. Aram and the Roaring Knight are completely unique. They're unlike anything
Very unique,
so far, and that's so fascinating to me because there's going to continue being secret bosses in future chapters, and we don't know what the hell they're going to be. We don't even have a way to start guessing.
And then there's, what happens in chapter 4, which I'm going to guess he's going to get to in a minute.
Of course, encountering the Roaring Knight in Chapter 3 is so much earlier than anyone thought we were going to see them. I think a lot of people were thinking Chapter 5 earliest, right, because of chess theory, but a lot of people were also thinking, like, the night is endgame, right? Like Chapter 6, 7, when shit starts to really go down. But that's not even the last thing that we thought was going to happen in the endgame that happens in these chapters. Chapter 3 overall, so fun, so funny, great music. It's like the perfect reprieve before things start really getting serious in this game.
And just going back, and seeing the night this early, quote unquote, early in the game, where just like before the halfway point, it does make much more sense, just narratively speaking, because like having the night actually appear like in chapter 5 or something like that for a first time could be seen. I could see it as being a little late. Because we've played all this time, and then we only see, the actual big bad of the game so late in the game. So having them appear now, so we actually start to get to, quote-unquote, know them and, like, fight against them maybe a couple of times or something. And actually, like, try to, like, learn something about them before they just, instead of them just appearing right before the end. I mean, I think I could see from a storytelling perspective, that could be a bit better.
Really appreciate it a lot for that. It's such a fun time. But then Chapter 4 starts, and Chapter 4 is Deltarune's best chapter, hands down. I was
so
blown
far
away by every aspect of it, really. There's nothing about Chapter 4 that I didn't like. First of all of the Chris and Susie moments in the intro Light World portion are so good. I love the developing friendship between Chris and Susie, and seeing them connect so much is also really one of the biggest indicators that whatever Chris is doing with the Knight and Carol and whatever, that Chris is still a lonely teenager and a character we should care about, because their connection with Susie is so it's the best. It's the best relationship in the game. I'm saying it right now. I'm saying it. One revelation that comes on early in Chapter 4 that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about as much as I would expect them to is the fact that the prophecy is the whole town's religion. I think a lot of us were operating under the assumption that the prophecy is something that Gaster gave directly to Ralsei and no one else knows it, but now we know that the prophecy is common knowledge, which is really interesting. Really, the only reason we didn't know that already is because Chris doesn't talk and Susie doesn't go to church. But everyone else, basically everyone else in town, should know what the prophecy is, and by extension I think most if not all Darkners do as well. Which reminds me, there's that line from Lancer in Chapter 1, the one where he says that he's the pointy-headed kid from the prophecy. And there's always been discourse around that line, questioning if he really does know the prophecy or if it's just a meta joke and we shouldn't pay much attention to it. But now we know that Lancer literally does appear in the prophecy as small of a part as he does play, saying toothpaste and then boy. He's in.
God, I had completely forgotten that he actually said that in Chapter 1. I remember the joke, and like you see, the stained glass window of Lancer. But again, I completely forgotten he actually mentions that he's in the prophecy.
In that thing. But anyways, I'm skipping ahead too far. The reveal of Ralsei's room in Castletown is so heartbreaking and so good. And again, we are chipping away at Ralsei's lack of self-worth and his refusal to acknowledge his growing personhood, his identity. And seeing Susie at every single opportunity push back against that and insist that Ralsei is a real person who deserves things,
heartwarming. I was going to say horrifying, but that's not right.
And deserves to be themselves. It's so good, so beautiful, so heartwarming. Susie's so great. And then, of course, we have the scene
Oh, God,
at the
yeah.
holiday house. And this is fucking insane. Chris tears the soul out of their body, throws it in a gift box, but then we as the soul get to leave the gift box, start moving around the vents, and interact with the world physically as the soul rather than as Chris. That was such a surreal feeling, but because it feels like our control as the soul has been so limited so far. Like, really,
the fact
the
we
only
actually get to
amount
move
of control
around
we've exerted as it outside of battles, of course, is when we've been in the birdcage and we're able to like move around a pixel at a time. The fact that we can fly around the holiday house and interact with shit and eavesdrop on Asgore and Chris and the fact that Noelle and Susie pick us up is so surreal. Again, stuff like this I thought would only happen near the end game, where our control over the soul really starts to differentiate itself from Chris.
God, yeah, again, that was one of those things, and I wish I had saved it, but I remember I saw, like, just the glimpses of something on Twitter where somebody had made a little AU where what if, like, Susie and Noelle actually, like, unveiled, like, lifted up the angel to see, you know, us, the soul there. And, God, I wish I could find it again, because I want to see how that one turned out, because I only ever saw the first panel, and I forgot to save it.
And I'm glad it does, because I think it makes it a lot clearer to casual players what's going on here, that we're a separate entity from Chris, and they don't like that we're possessing them. And goddamn, the Suzel content in this part of the game is fucking wild. You played it, you saw it, you know what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
They are so adorable. I love it. I love it all. Now, the fascinating stuff about this segment as the soul is all the shit you can eavesdrop on, like I already mentioned. First of all, you can eavesdrop on Chris on a phone call with someone while they're making chocolate milk. It seems like the words they're saying are broken up, like we're not hearing the whole conversation, but they're talking about how a sacrifice is going to be happening next week, seemingly having to do something with the cops, which might be why they took Undyne. The fact that Chris needs the soul to do something in particular, most likely to seal fountains and to seal titans, as we see later. Chris having the soul inside them is part of whatever plan they're conspiring. And then we find Asgore, and Asgore's like cleaning their toilet or something, like he's basically the holiday's maid. But then we get this revelation that he has a black shard that might be a shadow crystal. And this is really strange because shadow crystals up until this point
have only ever been for
explicitly said to
secret
look
bosses,
like glass, basically. That being said, the knight's armor is completely black, right? Their armor and their sword. And then when Susie takes a chip off of their sword when you beat the knight fight, the black part that comes off is a shadow crystal. So are we to assume that the black thing Asgore has is also a shadow crystal, or is it something completely different? Does it have to do with the knight? Really unclear at the moment. And there's also, oh god, I haven't even talked about this. In the gacha machine in Chapter 3, when you put in 1225 into how many points you donate into it, 1225 being Christmas, of course, you get this secret where you find another gacha machine and like a little black shard of something comes out of that, and it feels like it passes through your hand, like you can't see your hand through it, and then you don't have a hand at all. I can't remember exactly all the text that it says, but it seems to imply that the black thing is also the thing that is see-through. I don't know. It's strange. It's strange.
God, okay. Well, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that there were, you know, secrets hidden in that thing, but God, okay, I didn't think people had actually found anything. Interesting.
Strange. But it seems like Asgore has a shadow crystal. Not only that, but when you look inside Asgore's flower shop in the basement, you can see that he has like conspiracy boards pinned up and shit. In the church, Toriel talks about how Carol, Noelle's mom, is enabling Asgore with the shit he's interested in. And then in Carol's bedroom, where you can spy on Asgore, you see she has conspiracy boards pinned up as well. So it seems like Asgore and Carol are somehow collaborating on whatever conspiracy, whatever this conspiracy is. And if I had to guess, it's probably, you know, has to do with Des. And Asgore has these lines about how it wasn't his fault and finally everyone will see and then they can be happy again.
And the amount of memes on Twitter I saw that basically boiled it down to Asgore somehow running Des over with his car. God, there was about like a 2 or 3 day period where that was literally the only thing being shared on Deltarune Twitter. It was so got so tiring really quickly.
And there's been this long-standing assumption in the fandom that Asgore had something to do with Dessa's death. Not that we had any evidence for it, but it was sort of just an Occam's razor connection. Like there's this mystery and there's this mystery, put them together and they feel like one mystery. But we do have confirmation that Toriel does somehow hold Asgore responsible for whatever happened to Dess, and that he's trying to clear his name. We'll have to see what happens with that in Chapter 5. But then Carol shows up, and Carol is fucking terrifying. The music that plays when she comes into the house, like the cold breathing sounds that play are so scary.
And I forget who said it, but somebody pointed out very much so, and the more I look at it, the more I believe it, but it seems like Carol's face sprite, her talk sprite, was very much, at least her face, was very much modeled after, Jim Carrey's Grinch. Which, God, if that's true, Toby Fox, what are you playing at? Are we going to get the equivalent of Carol's heart growing 3 sizes that day? Because honestly, there's not that much Christmassy about her besides the fact that she's a reindeer.
Immediately, you're like, this is a fucking villain that just walked in. She looks like the goddamn Grinch. And she hates that Susie and Noelle are hanging out, and she fucking kicks everyone out. Except, she puts her hand on Chris's shoulder, and she says, as you know, you are welcome here anytime. And you is highlighted in red. And that is so bizarre, because that implies that she's not talking to Chris, she's talking to us. But on the other hand, when Chris is talking on the phone, after Susie gets the guitar, I didn't even talk about that part, the code, one of the codes for the bunker is in Dessa's guitar, and Susie gets
for
the
some
guitar,
reason.
she wants to play it for Noelle. When Chris sees that happening, they call someone, and the person says, I'll be right there, and that's when Carol shows up. So there is some spiderweb of allegiances happening between Chris, Carol, the knight, and the player. It kind of seems like the player and Carol are on one side, and then Chris and the knight are on another. Maybe they're all conspiring. Maybe Carol and the knight are the same person. But again, why is Carol talking to the soul before talking to Chris?
Which, and also just the whole thing that, that we may or may not be, in fact, on the same side as Carol. This is literally the first time we've actually met her. And so far, she hasn't put her best foot forward. So I'm going to really wonder how that whole allegiance thing is going to actually work, if we're actually going to get the choice to continue helping her, even if it's inadvertently or something like that.
Crazy stuff we do not have an answer to. And that's not even taking into account the shit that goes down in the weird route, but I'm going to save that for later. So anyways, once Chris and Sue...
And the fact that, the weird, something of the weird route in Chapter 4, which, I'm going to assume Cammy's going to talk about, was changed not once, but twice, because people got weird about it.
Kicked out of the house, then it starts raining. They try to go home, but Toriel's at choir practice, and she has the key, so they go to the church. Oh, and fucking... I say this as someone who really doesn't ship often. Really, the idea behind the ship tier list video with me and Snellinger is that neither of us really are involved with shipping at all. But I say this as a non-shipper. Azzy Pants has fallen, and Nice Pants is rising from the ashes. I'm telling you.
Pants.
Also, I was completely correct about Bratty catfishing Burger Pants, but now it's Nice Cream Blue Ears Man catfishing Burger Pants instead. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I hope they get together by the end. But finally, Chris and Susie enter the church dark world. And that is another one of my predictions that came true, but it was a pretty popular prediction, so I can't really take any credit for it. I predicted Caddy and Jockington would be in this world, and they sure aren't.
No.
The beginning of this dark world was like an ascendant moment for me. But, well, first of all, they see the knight in there. The knight throws some swords at him and makes him fall a big distance. Ralsei shows up, and Ralsei is acting strange, stranger than usual in this chapter. We'll find out why later. But when the gang's all together and Ralsei shows up, you start climbing these stairs and seeing pieces of the prophecy laid out. And the music that's playing, the first sanctuary music, is fucking transcendent. You see all the, I forget what they're called, but the singing enemies in the background appearing as they go like, oh, oh. You're climbing the stairs, listening to this music, seeing the prophecy unfold, and it's like, oh, it's magic.
Honestly, again, that's one of those things, and I don't know how many times I have to, be reminded of this fact, but, Toby is very good at making music, and the fact that, he's able to make this music that is like so good in quality when you're working with something as limiting as, you know, making it sound like a 16-bit or an 18-bit or not 60 like an 8-bit or a 16-bit game, or in most cases, or maybe 32-bit would be more accurate. Either way, it doesn't matter. But the fact that you're working in these more like quote unquote limiting fields, and yet you're able to make like such good sounding music. Like I know, like for the last number of years they've had, or like actual like video game themes played out by literal orchestras, and now more than ever I want to hear that played by an actual orchestra with an actual choir or something like that. Like, oh, it would be just absolute, it would be beautiful. I can already tell. And that is it for now, unfortunately. This is, of course, a part of a much larger reaction, so link to the next part should be appearing, somewhere over my face, as well as in the corner of the video. I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you in the next part. See ya!